Yeah, here we go. Hi.
Hey, Clint.
Good morning.
Good morning.
To everybody in the West Coast, we're actually like doing this talk at 9 o'clock in the morning. So, but we both have kids, so we've been up for hours, right? And so,
Exactly.
um, friends, I
Exactly.
want to introduce everybody to Mia Neal. Mia Neal is an accomplished, okay, so how do I even start this? Like, she's a wig hair designer and also a hair department head for film. She's also a makeup designer, and she also does that both for film and theater. Mia's credits are probably one of the most diverse I've ever seen of a hair designer. So she's worked on films like Ghostbusters, Henrietta, Uncut Gems, and most recently she designed the hair and the wigs for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom on Netflix. Yeah, it's unbelievable. On Broadway, she's done a lot too. She's done Raisin in the Sun with Sophie Okonedo, and Anika Noni Rose and Denzel, and she also did Shuffle Along with Audra McDonald and all of the African American stars on Broadway, directed by George Wolfe. And most recently, just before the pandemic, she designed both hair, makeup, and wigs for West Side Story.
Not the makeup. Not the makeup.
Not the
Just the
makeup,
not the makeup.
not the makeup, just the hair. For some reason, I saw you attaching some tattoos, though. There was a picture of you like working on some tattoos. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that was a, but so hair and wigs for West Side Story. Hi, Mia.
Hey, Clint. You make me sound like somebody.
You are somebody. You are somebody. You have to follow Mia's Instagram page. And I think, what is it? I am Mia? Is it? No.
Okay, I have no, what is my Instagram? It's like Brooklyn, Indiana, because I'm from
Right, right,
Indiana
right,
and the
right,
town I was
right.
living in Brooklyn, so it's like Brooklyn, Indiana, or something like that.
And by the way, Mia, okay, so this is, she said, so this is why she's also somebody, she's really somebody. Mia is an Emmy nominated artist for Pose, because you department headed a couple of episodes for Pose, right?
Not for that one. I'm a good friends with Chris Clark and he was designing it. And then he
Yeah,
invited me to come on in the subject matter. I just couldn't resist. And I was like,
right.
I will, yes.
Oh, it was for
And so,
hairstyling. That's right.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. We're gonna take a look at some of those pictures later. Mia, I always want to start like this, this conversation by thanking you for finding the time, but
Thank you.
it's
Thank you
kind
for
of,
having me.
of course, gosh, it's such an honor. And, the whole university is actually going to see this. And so it's very exciting. Yeah, I know it's very, the theater program is actually merging with digital media. And so
Oh,
we're also looking at design now through all of the media, through all of that lens, but also the entire UCLA, this is University of California, Santa Cruz, but the whole UC
mhm.
system is actually looking at their curriculum and looking at it with an eye through decolonizing, anti-racism, and dismantling white supremacy. So it's an
Wow.
exciting time,
Right.
particularly for students who are learning, because the canon is changing. Like, we're not just going to do
Totally.
all like white plays, and so all of that is very, very exciting. But I want to start by asking you where you're zooming in from right now.
I'm in Queens.
Oh,
I'm in
yay.
Queens, New York. Yeah, absolutely. In
And
my living room.
a beautiful living room. And I always
Thanks.
ask, I had I don't know if you know Charlize Antoinette Jones. She's a costume designer. She just did Judas and the Black Messiah, which is coming out in,
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
yeah. And I always ask, guests, like, this is like a hard time for everybody. So where are you finding your joy these days?
Well, I don't let people dictate whether or not I'm happy or sad.
Come
So,
on.
right, listen, my joy shows up every morning when I wake up.
And that is true.
That's it. It's like we have to make a conscious decision to first of all, I always have to remind myself of like, where am I? Who's around me? Like, what is my real life? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because it can get really cloudy sometimes when you turn on the news and you absorb all of these things going on. And not that I'm ignoring those things or I'm not acknowledging that they're happening, but I also have to remind myself that like the world that I know, it's not like that in a way. You know what I mean? Like I
Yes.
have friends from all over the world of
Yes.
all walks of life. We love each other. We call each other family. You
Yes.
know, it's like, the opportunities that I received in my life have been from all walks of life.
Yes.
So I just have to remind myself of like, the majority, really all the people that I know, we share the same, goals and
Yeah.
morals and values, and we come from all over the world.
Yeah.
So that is reassuring of what the world is really like. And I'm not saying that those other things don't exist, but I just try not to give that too much energy. You know what
Yes.
I mean?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
I always have to remind myself, listen, I have this friend, that friend, this friend, like we are all disgusted by what's taking place
Yes.
equally,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and that gets me through. You know what I mean? That's because I just
Yeah.
remind myself of who I am and who I'm around. And I think that we more so represent the majority. I just really do. And I
Yeah.
feel like those who don't live the way I live, if they knew that this life existed, they would choose this over what they're doing. That I know. I just
I
know it.
love that.
I
Yeah.
just know it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding us. Sometimes, like, I think, we get really caught up in what's going on um, to us, right? And then, and we don't really zoom out and say, hey, actually, A, we're in a global pandemic, but B, all of the social unrest is actually affecting everybody. You know what I mean? And it's been going on for like a long time. And so you're not alone, in other words, and
No.
I always thank you for reminding us that, because sometimes, like, when you get like, when it's a struggle to find that joy, I always feel like, oh gosh, this feels so alone. Like I feel like this is just happening to me, but it's actually not, and then there's
No.
so many people out there that can actually kind of like dig you out of that,
It's true. It's true.
the family.
Listen, and it is hard to remind yourself of the people around you when you can't go around them. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's hard when you can't throw a dinner party and like
yeah,
remind yourself of like this is the world that I live in,
yeah, yeah,
that
yes,
I
yes,
choose to live in, that I
yeah,
choose to
yeah,
live in,
yeah,
and so it's hard because it's like, okay, I haven't seen them, we haven't seen, but yeah, you just got to find a way to do it because with everything going on, it can really, I mean, that's the definition of depression,
yes, yeah,
it really is.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah,
so,
yeah.
yeah.
No, thank you for reminding us that. I always love that question because, like, it just our guests just like dig deep, and it's like, wait a minute, where am I finding my joy? And I love this idea of that joy is a decision. Like every day you wake
It's
up and
absolutely,
I'm just
it
gonna
is
do
definitely a decision.
it. Mia, so okay, just go, like, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, how did you even like find yourself in this position that you are now? Like, like, what's the story? What's the origin story of Mia Neal?
Well, let's see. So I guess I won't take you all the way back, but I started. So Juilliard has an apprenticeship program that I did.
Yeah.
So I moved to New York to do this apprenticeship program.
Where did you
So
move
wig and
from?
makeup. Hmm?
Where did you move from?
Well, I moved from Mississippi
Whoa,
by
Mia.
way of Indiana. Yeah, so I grew up in Gary, Indiana.
Yes.
Went to college in Jackson, Mississippi.
Yes.
And then while I was in school, I was working at MAC Cosmetics.
Yes.
And I met a girl there who had just finished the internship. And I had no idea that that Juilliard had
The
this
Juilliard
internship.
internship. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Folks,
she
this
told
is
me
a
about it.
Yeah, this is an internship that what Mia's talking about at the Juilliard School in New York City. Basically, there's like really elaborate shops that support all the students because there are so many students that are performing and all that kind of stuff. What Mia is talking about is a hair and wig internship that is, I think, year long, right, Mia?
It is. It's the run of a school year. And they have it for all backstage
Yeah.
programs. So they give the students this sort of realistic view of what it'll be like when they're out in the workforce.
Yeah.
And so they have them for the drama, for dance, for the opera, and just, the lighting, the sound, across the board. You can, they have all of these, they're called the professional apprenticeship program is what it's called.
Okay.
And so I applied for wig and makeup and I got it. And so I moved to New York, did the wig and makeup program for a year. I moved here with the goal of just working on Broadway.
Yes.
And I was like, as long as I can work on Broadway, and I would say within the first 4 months of being here during the internship, I ended up working on Broadway during Thanksgiving.
Hello.
Then, right. And then and then from there, I kind of like, after the apprenticeship was over, do you know Tom Watson?
Yes, of course. Okay, so Tom Watson, folks, is basically the granddaddy of wig design. Okay?
Yes, he is. Okay, he may have invented ventilating.
That's right. He used to run the Met wig and hair department. So Tom Watson, if you Google Tom Watson, just like Google Tom Watson and wigs, and you'll see he did Wicked. Okay. Yes. So yeah, he's basically the granddaddy of
totally. And I think, and at that time he was running like 9 opera houses, plus he had Broadway shows.
That's right. That's right.
And so I was like, I need to work for him. So I went to Santa Fe Opera to work with him the summer after my apprenticeship ended.
Yes.
And Tom was fantastic. He was a sweetheart and he taught me so much and really kind of fine-tune what I, had learned at Juilliard, in terms of ventilating, because it takes you a while to really learn how to make a beautiful wig. Like you can start off tying knots, but
Mia, can you tell me a little bit what ventilating is?
So ventilating is there's a little needle with a little hook on the end, almost like a fish hook, but like shrink that all the way down. And then it's like a latch hook process where you kind of put the needle through and then you pull a loop of hair through and you tie a knot with it. And you do that process from the nape all the way up to the front of the hairline. Then the nape you pull like maybe 2 or 3 hairs.
Yes.
And until you work all the way up to the front of the hairline, which is all single knotted hairs. So that's the process. Then you make a mold of the person's head. You then build a cap out of a flat lace that you sort of tie and mold into, the shape of the person's head. And then, from the tracing that you did of their hairline, you recreate a new hairline to make the wig a perfect fit and a perfect match for that person's hairline.
I just want to say that this is one of the most amazing things that, I don't think folks know, right? That, wigs, every strand of hair that you see on these hand ventilated wigs are actually tied by hand.
Totally.
And when Mia says like ventilating, it really means that like each strand is knotted into this piece of net. I'm trying to find a picture of, okay, so let me see. I went to Gretchen's Facebook page because Gretchen is making wigs. So let me show. I think Gretchen is actually. So this is what Mia is talking about, folks. You see,
there you go.
Every single strand of hair is hand tied. So that's what ventilating is. Okay, sorry, Mia. I distracted your thing.
No, it's good. Sometimes I forget that a lot of people don't know what I'm talking about. So it's good that you're, staying up on it because I'm like, oh, when you ventilate. Yeah.
So Tom.
So Tom took me under his wing, and I worked for Tom for many years. Also Charles LaPointe, because they shared a studio. That's so right. I ended up working more.
Also another Broadway wig designer who
did
Hamilton, all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I would say between the two of them, and I really worked closer with Chuck. I started off with Tom, but then I started doing more of Chuck's shows.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I think the last show that I ended up working was like Color Purple, the first one on
Yes.
Broadway.
With LaShawn.
And yes, with LaShawne's and Fantasia and then Shaka Khan and
Oh, that's
everybody
right.
who
That's
came
right. That's
through.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And and then after that, I realized that I really wanted to branch off into film and
Mhm.
TV. Like, I think I day played on a couple of shows while I was doing Color Purple. And I knew then, like, I really would love to do this transition into film or TV. And from there, I just kind of, I really just started refusing theater jobs because at some point you just have to make the leap, you
Because it's
know.
a very different schedule, folks. It's
Very
very
different
different.
schedule. And also, because it wasn't like I was supervising shows on Broadway, but I didn't just jump right into supervise or, department heading on film and TV, of course. So when I would get those calls, it was to come in and day play on other people's jobs. And if you're not available, they kind of stop calling. They may try you twice, and if you're not available, you're kind of off the list.
That's
And
right.
it's not to really like snub you, but I
It's
get
not
it. It's like,
personal. It's just that
no,
we're
not at all,
yeah.
because you're kind of setting the tone of your show. So
Yes.
you want the same hands to come in and do the
Mhm.
work so that you can maintain the continuity. And you
Yeah.
don't want someone to come in and they're doing something else and doesn't. And after a while, you just don't really want to keep an eye on what's going on with the
Mm.
background and that sort of thing. So once you get the tone set, you kind of use the same people. So
Yeah.
if people reached out and I wasn't available, I didn't get a call again. So I just had to say, I'm not taking any more Broadway shows and I'm going to make myself completely available. And that's what I did. And I worked on several of other people's shows until, someone said, hey, I'm about to go do this movie. You should come do the hair for it. And I was like, department head. And from there, it just sort of, snowballed and transitioned until I met Ann Roth.
Yes.
And then Ann Roth just kind of put some wings on my career. And,
Right. Yes, the great Ann Roth. Okay, so Ann
yes.
Roth, folks, is basically, how do I even describe Ann? Just legend, just
Totally.
legend. Like she has an Oscar, Tony's. She is costume design, basically.
Right. Right.
Any
Yeah. Ann
movie,
is
any Broadway
incredible.
show, and uh, and is constantly working, has been working since, I would say, what would you say, the 50s or 60s,
Somewhere along there. Because
Yeah.
Ann's in her 80s.
Yeah, and Anne is nonstop and will not stop and won't stop, and you can't stop her.
No.
She just like last year alone, I think Anne did like 3 shows on Broadway. And doing movies. So
Mhm.
uh,
She's
lots of love to
incredible.
Anne. Yeah, exactly.
She's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ann really like changed the way that, I think before I would see something and I go, oh, that would look nice on this person, talking about like hair,
Yeah.
that would look great. Or that would be awesome. Or that would be this. And Anne was the one that really started challenging me around, or really just taught me that you really need a backstory, you
Yeah.
know, like a costume designer does, like the director, like the actors, like
Yes. It is
you need
design.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, totally. You
Yeah.
need to come up with a complete and total backstory of this person that you're not going to find in the script. And you need to, so that you can explain why you chose this, why it's appropriate for this person, and it really changed the way that I designed hair, the way that I saw characters, the
Yes.
importance of being, so that when someone challenges, even if it's an actor, why I chose to do this look for them,
Yes.
I tell them my story about why I think this person would choose this. Not that I'm not open to changing it, but it makes them it develops a certain relationship between the actor and I, that they understand that I didn't just pull this out of an old
catalog,
photo.
or
Or
you just thought,
exactly.
like you just said, oh, this will look good on them, right?
Exactly.
Let me let me
Yeah.
let me pause here because I want to share. I think your first Broadway show with Anne, which was Raisin in the Sun, was the first show that you've designed for Anne. So
Yes.
this is Sophie Okonedo, Anika Noni Rose, and Denzel Washington in last, I think the latest revival of Raisin in the Sun. And
Correct.
I love this photograph because this is the part that Anika's character actually cut her hair. Like she, I think Benitha was her character, and that, as a form of showing where she is and how progressive she is and how kind of revolutionary, her character is. She actually cut her hair, and she also wore it natural.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about this process right here, Mia. Like, I mean, because they're all wearing wigs, right? Like, so
Right.
folks on Broadway, people, if you see a show, more likely they're actually wearing wigs, right? And because that's
It's
because they have
easier for continuity because you have a half an hour to get people ready.
half an
You
hour,
know,
half an
right.
hour.
Right. You have a half an hour to get everyone into costumes, makeup, hair, all of that. And so you have a half an hour. You don't have time to curl someone's hair. You don't have time to, create a whole look off of, what they, them. For the continuity of the show, for the efficiency of that half an hour, wigs are just the best move,
Yeah.
and also sometimes the lighting can really dry out and kind of burn a person's natural hair.
Yes.
So it can cause, if this is some open run show and they're on that
Eight shows
stage.
a week.
Exactly.
Eight
Good
shows a
luck.
week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good luck with the health of
Big
your
luck.
hair under those lights.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it
love
can.
what you said about, like wig design is also, and hair design really is based on character, and this idea that what you're designing actually is also storytelling, the way you're actually talking about, like, this is the way this person's hair looks because this is the way their story is, right? Like, I think
Totally.
we
Yeah,
decide how we, or we don't decide, or sometimes we just, every single human being appears that way for a reason.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
they have a story. It's like, and you have to find that story.
Yeah.
Even talking about A Raisin in the Sun. The first time I worked on A Raisin in the Sun, it was the one with Felicia Rashad and Sanaa Lathan.
And he
But
did
I
it.
was but Charles LaPointe designed it and
Yeah.
I supervised. That was the first show I
Uh-huh.
supervised on Broadway.
So you
So
already
it's crazy. That was the
started
first one I
looking at it.
supervised.
Yeah.
Right. And then this one was the first one I designed.
Yes,
That
yes,
was my
yes.
first design job on Broadway, and Raisin Sun was my first supervising job on Broadway.
Amazing. Yeah, yeah.
Right. And the first one, and not to like, do a, it's apples or whatever, but um one thing that so when I designed it, what I did was I went to Chicago
Yes.
and I pulled some photos from churches and old high schools,
Yes.
the yearbooks and the let me tell you, a Black church is the best thing for archives for Black people of all times, right? Because they always took these like group photos. They would have picnics, they would have, the church revival.
This
And
is
so there's
amazing.
all these like archives of photos. So whenever I go to a different city, I love to go to old churches, let me take you to this sanctuary, this place, whatever. And see, if you call ahead, there's always somebody there that's like, oh yeah, I know all the pictures are. And I say, can I just come? I won't take that much of your time. I just want to take a couple of photos of things. And everyone's always receptive. They have 100,000 stories to tell you, and it's one of the best experiences. So if you ever are like looking for like some unfound archives, because it's hard to find research on, especially African Americans.
Yes.
It's really difficult because it's just a part of the countries has just kind of been ignored in that way, but it
Thank
doesn't mean
you.
it doesn't
Yes.
exist.
Thank you for
It
saying that. Thank you for saying that. Folks, this is really, really important. What Mia is basically talking about is her process and research, right? And so what we're talking about here is like stuff that you can't find on Google, right? You can't find on like the popular kind of platforms because of the way this country functions, right? So we know which images are being put on magazines, which images are, you know, which images are quote unquote more popular, right? So that basically relegates like images of African Americans to their communities, to their, you know, it never goes out into the popular culture. It's probably good because then it's preserved that way. But, you know, but like this all is rooted into that, in this idea of oppression really in America. So what Mia's talking about is going into these churches, looking at these photographs that probably have not been seen, right? Like it's not been seen since like yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like, you know, and they've preserved it. They usually have, you know, little boxes and things that they, you know, storage areas. And then also high school yearbooks.
Wow.
Right? You could go to all high schools and they will have all the yearbooks dating back to when the school first started.
And this was, and some of this is probably, you know, before integration, right? So like.
Exactly. You actually can see where the schools will flip.
Wow.
Right? Wow. So if you go, you'll see the yearbooks and you go, okay, you'll see a yearbook that's sort of like all white and then it'll flip all black. You know, right?
Wow.
So so you can see where, you know, where everything kind of like changed, and but it's really a good resource to especially yearbooks, because it's a headshot, you know, and a lot of times it's hard to get those up close hair photos, you know.
Amazing, Mia. So folks, I mean, I just don't, you know, like, please, like, just what I'm trying to like really like, I'm kind of going crazy in my mind, because I love what Mia is basically talking about, that her process actually doesn't begin in the dressing room or in the thing. Her process begins way before that. Like she went to Chicago, did the research and all of that kind of stuff. And it's almost like being a detective, right, Mia?
It is. Yeah. And it makes you debate other parts of the thing. Like sometimes I have to shut up, you know, because it does. I'm sorry. Sometimes I'm like, okay, you know what, keep it to yourself, because they've already designed that set. You may not want to say that, you know, because I start challenging things, you know, like for instance, with the Raisin in the Sun.
Right.
So I know that, you know, now that people have, you know, written different things, I know that when Lorraine Hansberry first put it up on Broadway, that the producers said to her that they felt like it was too polished. And at one point they wanted the little boy outside in the alley playing with rats. Okay.
Yeah, they cut that scene.
Yeah. And that's insane, right? So you have to think about, let's look at what Chicago was during that time. Like not what Chicago is now, after, you know, losing a lot of resources and things sort of, you know, let's look at what Chicago was during that time, right? So at a time when segregation was active, right? You have to think about that the Black community was both white collar and blue collar. Doctors, lawyers, engineers, janitors, chauffeurs, barbers, everyone was in the same community, right? And businesses were thriving because you couldn't go to other communities and spend your money. So the Black dollar stayed in the Black community, right? And children had relationships with a doctor who lived on their block, even if their parents were a school teacher, okay? Because everyone had to live in the same community. And what happened when segregation ended was that you ended up with an all blue collar community, because those who could afford to leave, who were white collar, they left, right? And a lot of the Black dollar also left.
Yes.
Right? But when you look at it during segregation, which is what we're talking about during A Raisin in the Sun, that was a thriving Black community, right? You also have to look at generationally where this family was. My assumption is that the mother, her parents were part of the Great Migration, and she probably was a small child, right? But her parents probably walked from the South to the North when slavery ended, right? To get out of there in case this slavery ending only gonna last for, you know, for a minute. Let's get out of here. You know, let's leave on foot.
That's
And
right.
so what mindset is a person, right, who comes from a family who literally walked to make sure that they had freedom, right? That walked from Mississippi or some southern state, right?
Mhm.
Chicago was mainly a straight line from
Mhm.
Mississippi straight up. So that's why I always say Mississippi, because that great
Mhm.
migration, majority of people who ended up in Chicago walked from Mississippi.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
So that's why I'm saying that Lena, I believe that was her name, right?
yes.
That
Lena.
that her
Lena
parents
Younger.
probably walked
Yeah.
from Mississippi to Chicago to give her a better life.
Yes.
So and then you get there and you have nothing and you work your way up, right? And so you get a place to live, you get clothing, you get, I mean, we're talking about starting from scratch, from the
Right.
bottom.
Right.
So here they are about to purchase a home. Here is a child, here's a girl in college. Here they are live. To me, their home is immaculately clean. Their clothes are immaculately
Oh,
clean
yes.
and pressed.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. There is everything in the house. There is intentional.
Yeah.
Everything is a purpose. Like
Yeah.
that's the family that I see. I
Yeah.
don't see a kid playing with rats.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
I don't see
No. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the first one that I worked on, there was a dirty mattress in the room that no one ever saw, right? But it didn't have any sheets on it. The walls were dirty. The sink was like this really kind of old, beat up, and I didn't buy that. To me, I felt like that was fake. That was sort of put on this idea that they lived in poverty and that that's what poverty looked like. Um, but to me, I was like, no, I know that during that time, a chauffeur was one of the most prestigious jobs in the community, a chauffeur and a barber. You know what I mean? Just from
Yeah.
the research that I did.
Yeah.
So when I started looking at all these things, I disagreed with the first one that I worked on. I love that the second one that I worked on, that the set was beautiful, that you could see that they took pride in their home,
Yeah.
that they, took care of everything that they had. They
Yeah.
don't have a lot, but everything is pristine. It may
Everything
not be
like it wasn't a lot, and it's not palatial, right? Because
exactly.
there also has to be a reason why they want to move, right? And so like
No,
that,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, right. And the resources, like they want to own their home.
That's right.
This was a rental,
This was a rental, and
Yeah.
these folks, if you do like the deep dive into Raisin, it's really out of this kind of like what they called kitchenettes, right? And so during the Great Migration, there would be, they would have, most of these were white landlords apportioning like apartments basically for Black
Yeah.
families coming in, and as those families grew, they basically outgrew the size of these apartments, and so
Right.
like you can see that everybody's kind of like, there's a lot of folks like living in, but I think one thing that's really important to note, Mia, is this idea that poverty and race, the way popular culture represents poverty, particularly through race, is always through this lens of
Of lack
of
and
scarcity,
dirty. Yeah.
right, of dirty, and there's absolutely bereft of dignity, right? Because I'm just going to challenge anybody right now to actually just go to anywhere that you think is a depressed neighborhood where Black folks live and look at the way Black folks come out of those buildings.
Exactly. And that's always my argument too. Even in the what, no matter what time period, right?
Jewelry, everything.
Pristine.
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 I challenge sneakers, unbelievably clean. I challenge you to go
Yeah.
to any neighborhood and like look at the way Black folks come out of these buildings, because
Yeah.
it will really startle you like how much you've been programmed to think
Right.
that poverty, particularly Black poverty, is closely related to.
And you know what else was interesting too? When I was doing the research, which is why I went to Chicago,
Yeah.
because everything that I found online, particularly I remember this Wikipedia, when I put in, I think like 1950s Chicago, trying to pull up images.
Yeah.
And it showed there was an image of these Black women walking down what
Yes.
one would think was the street,
Yeah.
but I know that it's actually the alley.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the building, so Chicago is so architecturally gorgeous,
Yeah.
right? Like um the front of every building in Chicago has a facade,
Yeah.
right? You don't get the, like here you'll see a brick building that just has all four sides of the
Yeah.
building look the same.
Yeah.
You don't get that in Chicago. You will see a difference between the front of a building and the back of a building,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? And in Chicago they have alleys,
Yeah.
right, where they put the trash, right? They don't put the trash out in the front of the
Yeah.
buildings. It goes in the alleyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing about the alleyways, especially on the south side of Chicago, is that they have wooden fire
Fire
escapes
escapes. Yes.
that go up the back of the building.
That's right. Yeah.
And and really people use them as kind of patios now and that
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
see those wooden
Yeah.
fire escapes that go along the back of the building. And if you look it up, it was Wikipedia, it was like 1950s, and it showed these Black women walking down the alley and it was trash,
Yeah.
right? But I know that that's the alley, but
Yes.
they didn't specify that that was the alley. And
Yes.
it made it look like, right? If you're not familiar
That
with
they were
the
living in
area, with the
squalor.
time,
Yeah.
exactly, you would assume that this is what that neighborhood looked like. And it didn't. During that time, it was thriving. This was the south side of Chicago. This,
Thank you so much for saying that, Mia, because a lot of like, particularly costume designers and like, even say any designer, right, who is like researching African American life. Toni Morrison once said, to study African American culture is to study America, right? But like I want to warn everybody to really question every photograph that you see, because of all the bias that happens through media and through press. Like really ask like really figure out what you're looking at and ask questions, right? Like particularly with what Mia is talking about, like it never is presented on a neutral plane, right? So like really ask a lot of questions. So yeah, like this is
yeah, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, we've all been kind of programmed to think these things, and you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
and so it is, especially when you see it written, you're like, oh, that must be fact. There's certain things that I probably won't challenge because I don't know. You know what I mean? Like for
Yeah.
this, I'm definitely going to challenge it because my family's from that area.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I grew up 20 minutes outside of Chicago.
right.
So,
Right.
I have family there. I can look at the
Black
photos of
belt.
my
I
family.
think they call it the black belt. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's like I can see photos of my family
Yeah.
and know, okay, wait a minute. Now they had, and this and they had this and they bought properties and they did this. And so I will always challenge those things,
Yeah. It's
but there might be something about another culture that I might go, oh, is that what happened?
right.
Of course, me, I'm going to challenge it anyway now, but I can see where my mind might not immediately, but I'll challenge everything just because I don't know how well that American history has been preserved across the board.
Or even taught, like that has not been taught, right? There's so much that
so much,
taught,
we've all been robbed of the truth. You know what I mean? We've all been robbed of the truth, and so we all have to question. We have to, I'll dive a little. I'll take it more personally about African Americans. You know what I mean? But
yes,
everyone, white Americans have to question. They have to dive in. They should be
right.
equally as offended. All of us.
I once was talking about this, and it's like, when did like I think folks need to understand, particularly white folks in America, when they became white. Right, like when they didn't, all of a sudden they weren't Norwegians anymore. They weren't, Jewish anymore. They weren't like, they had to sign up to one thing, which is white here in America. And when did that happen? How did they sign up for that? Anyway, we digress. But I was just gonna say, part of this too, this kind of like, as we're talking about this, it makes me think about these sort of preconceived notions, right? Like I remember when I was doing, I'm not going to mention, but I was doing a show on Broadway with like an all Black female cast. And the producers were like, why are the wigs costing so much? Can't they just use their own hair? And it's like, I want to just kind of like really talk about like what what the construct of hair is for African American women in particular, but like also why this idea that that using their own hair is just that easy, right? Like I think part of the specificity and also what value African American women put in hair in particular is actually, I don't think we've actually unpacked that enough in both in film and in theater, right? And
Mhm.
so what is your like, so when a producer says, why is that, why is it costing that much? Or like, why is extra care being put into, or extra care, they call it special care. Why is special attention, be like when a producer says, why is special attention being placed on African-American hair? What do you say to that? Like what, unpack that for us a little bit, Mia.
Okay, well, first, I've never had anyone say that, but maybe they would say that to a costume designer more
Yeah,
so than. But I've never had anyone really challenge around. I've been very lucky in that way that I've
yeah,
worked with some really extremely supportive people who are
yeah,
like,
yeah, 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 yeah.
I work with Scott Rudin, who was like, get it right the first time. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it calls make it happen, but it better be right. Uh, and so I've been really lucky in that sense. I haven't had anyone challenge me in that way. I know that there's a lot of talk now around like, Black actresses not being happy with the care that they have received or lack
Yes.
thereof.
Yeah.
I know that conversation has been introduced. I think that across the board, and I mean, God, they'll probably kill me for this, but I think across the board that sometimes when it comes to like, the union and stuff like that,
Yeah.
that a lot of hairstylists just are not that talented.
With
You
black
know,
hair,
I
or just a talented
I
period.
think across the board. I think
Yeah.
across the board. I think that that a lot of that is, and I think what has made that even more difficult is that um how do I say this while making a big long drawn out story? So for so long there weren't that many Black shows. There weren't that, diversity didn't really exist in film and TV, right? And if you're a person who's in the union and you work in film and TV and you work on Broadway, 9 times out of 10, you're not working in a salon
Yes.
outside of that, right? And
Yeah.
so if you've been in this business for 20 years, you've been you've been working on white hair,
Yes.
right? And so where do you get that experience? Even if before you got into the union, you were kind of doing everybody's
Yeah.
hair,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
how do you maintain that talent and ability to do it if no one ever sits in your chair that looks like that, right? And
Yes.
so this is the part where I kind of get a little, because I'm like, okay, now it's being blamed on the hairstylist, but I kind of blame the fact that diversity didn't exist in the first place because they've been doing their job. Now all of a sudden you want to bring in and put someone number 1 or 2 on the call sheet and they're left to do their hair. And I'm not blaming, you have to be prepared for who
Yeah.
sits in your chair. But
Yeah.
I think it's sort of like you kind of set people up at the same time because for so long you all didn't do it, and then when it became a little politically incorrect to not do it, now you're doing it and people don't have the skills
And
to do
people are
it.
not ready. Right.
They're
And
not
so,
ready,
right.
so
And
they
so,
have to get ready. They have to
yeah.
get
Yeah.
ready,
Yeah.
and I do see the union, they're giving classes now, they're trying to, I see all of that
But
happen.
this is kind of like an amazing, what you're actually saying, Mia, is really important, I think, so when produce, like, now that we're having a lot of Black shows, or like, as you said, there's more diversity in the programming, we don't have the sort of talent to kind of like meet that demand. And so I think what I'm hearing too, particularly as a designer, right? Like, well, producers budget in that whatever kind of like preparation we need to get folks ready, and I know that the union is doing stuff, but I think like
Yeah.
industry wide, we need to set people up for success.
Right, and open up the doors and let people in who can do it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
yeah, yeah,
if you're unable to do it, give this person a personal. Understand that you know, that what her hair needs and what this person's hair needs are completely different. And you know what? If she needs if she needs a special wig, if she needs this because this particular thing doesn't work for her, then we all have to be open to that conversation and not
That's
make
right.
that conversation brand new at every single turn. It's like, let's have it once. Let's realize that this is what needs to take place so that we can say, hey, remember that time we talked? This is the moment where okay,
Right.
great, let's do it,
Right.
and not like every single turn that fight has to happen all over
All
again,
over again.
brand new, like we don't know what's going on.
Thank you. Thank
It's
you.
like, but I do, it's like I kind of feel the need to stand up for hairstylists, and then I also
No.
think that it's time to bring in, it's time to bring in new people, which is happening. But I do understand how it happened.
Yeah.
I know that that even for myself, there's certain skills that I haven't used in years that
Yeah.
I wouldn't tell, like I haven't braided hair in years.
Yeah.
So if something calls for braiding, I bring someone in who does it on the regular.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that it has a certain look and it's not.
Yeah, yeah. I love what you said about like, like if we need a personal, when Mia says personal, it means like a personal hairstylist, right? And because the needs of African American, let's just say African American women, right, are particular, like, it is, we need folks to be trained in that, right? And so I think part of, for me, my experience is that like, we just can't bring anybody who's not trained, right? Like we have
And
to.
let me give an example too,
Yeah.
Clint, because I think sometimes it gets, so here's an example. So if I'm working on a film, and I have, let's say that the person whose hair I'm doing is a white woman, right?
Yes.
Even a Latino woman, comes in and she'll come in. She just washed her hair that morning. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. Is our call time. She comes in. Her hair is wet. I blow it out, and she's out of my chair in a half an hour.
Right.
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 She has the luxury of washing her hair that morning because it has a ton of hairspray in it from the day before when we filmed.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
she can come in and I blow dry it out and voila, she's off to the next chair, right?
Yes.
Now, let's say that an African American woman with natural hair, who now for this particular thing is wearing it straight, right?
Yes.
Because that's what the producers wanted.
Yeah.
She comes in, if she washes her hair and comes in, I am going to need extra time to blow her hair out and press it into that straight look, right?
Right.
I know how to do it. Let's say someone else doesn't know how to do it, right? Let's say I'm not there. Let's say that the person there is not familiar with her hair texture, but does everyone else in the show beautifully,
Yeah.
right? But is not familiar with her hair texture, has a difficult time. It's not easy. It is a process that you have to learn, right? I don't know it just because I'm Black. I know it because I worked at it and
That's
had a
right.
lot of clients,
That's
right? So let's not assume that
Yeah.
everyone Black is going to be able to do it because they're not.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Because I've taught other Black people, and I've also worked with someone one time who I had to go back over it and say, no, let me show you how I'm pulling. Let me show you the product I'm using. Let me show you this
I mean,
process
like Tom
of
and Chuck are
silkening it.
perfect examples of this, right?
Right. And so I'm saying that to say, because I don't want to give the impression that like, oh, you have to hire a Black person to do it. You don't. I also know one of my good friends, Jen, blonde hair, blue eyes. This girl can turn out anyone's hair who sits in her chair. Okay. So it's not a matter of race on who can do it. So don't just hire a random person thinking, but the thing with this woman is when she comes in, now, one, she's automatically going to assume that no one can do her hair when she shows up for this job, right?
Right.
So the question is she going to hire someone to come to her house the night before, which means she gets no sleep, right? Because she's having someone come every night to come and do her hair after she wraps, right? Or is she going to go to the producers and say, I need someone in the trailer, particularly my hairstylist that I use all the time, to come in and get me ready, right? When you say all of these things to a person who isn't well versed on what it takes to make her hair look like that, to know that it could take us 2 hours to get this hair silkened out like that, it sounds like she's being a diva, right? Like maybe that's the way is like, oh, why can't you just do what everyone else is doing?
That's right.
It doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah.
And for so long, you didn't even see natural Black hair on television.
Mm-hmm.
They had to get it to look straight or pressed out or silken, or they just didn't fit the description of what of what anyone wanted, right? So that 2, 3, 4 hour long process, how was that happening if they can't do it in the trailer?
That's right. And that's
She
right.
wasn't sleeping. She was hiring somebody. She's doing extra things to maintain this look that
Extra
none of the
labor.
other actors have to do.
Exactly.
And
Extra.
now they're voicing that and saying, I'm sick of not sleeping.
And
I
also
want to
not
be able
getting
to
paid
come
for all
into the
those
trailer.
hours that I'm actually preparing for it.
Right. I want to be able to wash my hair and come into the trailer in the morning too,
Right.
like everybody else. You
So
know,
what
I
you're
don't want to have to sleep like this because the girl can't come tonight and I can't get a dent in this and I can't sweat this out because no one in the trailer can get it back to the way it needs to look for continuity of the show and making sure I can keep my job.
Yeah. Thank you for saying all of that, Mia, because I think that's exactly what we're talking about, right? And I love what you said about like, get the person who knows that kind of hair, who has experience in that kind of hair. Because what usually happens is they're like, oh, let's get somebody who knows black hair, right? And this is where it gets really dangerous, right? And then if and when those producers say, oh, there's this black person, let's hire them because we assume that they know
Right.
how to do black hair. And then that black person, you know, for some reason, actually ends up not doing a good job just because they were not trained enough, right?
Right.
Then that paints a broader picture for all black folks. So here's what I'm saying is that we have to be careful about like
Yeah.
how things are, how we hire folks and how we set folks up for success. And I just want to
Yeah.
show.
And to just say, like, you know what, I like a blowout and I like it pressed. Okay, so when we're looking for the person, let's look for the person who can blow out, you know, an afro into a silk press, right? And then when it's that specific, then you can say it's the same way that if you say, you know what, I would like blonde highlights in my hair. Okay, well, let's find someone who does color. You wouldn't just say, let me just get a hairstylist in here. They may not be a colorist. You know what I mean? So you just have to get very specific about what it is we're doing. You know, if someone says, look, it's a show and it's all braids, I can't do it. That's not the show for me. I can point you in the direction of a braider, right? Who will do an excellent job for you, but that's not the job for me.
Right. But that's
You
part of
know,
our hair department head
exactly.
job too. It's like, who's the best braider I can find to do this braid right here?
Totally. But if it was a full show of braids, I just wouldn't do the job because what am I there doing?
Right.
I'm telling people, hey, you no, no. Like I need to get in there and I need to set the tone for what, you know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
can't do it if it was a show that was just about braids, you
Yeah.
know, and this is what the whole show is. And so I think that that's sort of it, you know, as well as like just being very specific on what it is that you're hiring and not assuming that because a person physically looks like they can or can't, you can't, you need to get very specific about what the job entails and can you fit this description? Can you do this work?
Yeah.
You
Yeah. Yeah.
know, and that makes a world of difference.
It's always kind of uh I love this conversation because I think what I'm also hearing is that, you know, folks who may not be African American,
Yeah,
don't be afraid to actually learn about
no,
African American
no.
hair.
And also some of them know, you know, and so this is why it's just important to just have a conversation,
Thank you.
you
I
know, just
always
have a
think about Chuck.
conversation.
You know, I always think about Chuck because Chuck, you know, does a lot of black shows. I call
Right.
him the Tina Marie of wig design.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
For the longest time, I thought Tina Marie was black, and then all of a sudden, like I was like, oh, wait a minute.
No, no.
But
Love
like,
Tina Marie.
you know, I think there's like this idea that you know that that's a separate conversation from like access, right? Like having enough African American hairstylists on Broadway, right? Like that's a different
Right.
conversation from like, you know, learning about black hair, you know, because I think that also if you are going to be a hair department head and you have black actors, you know, you need to know who are the really skilled technicians who can actually do all of that. Like
Totally.
I'm gonna show a couple of
Now,
amazing.
Uncut Gems, that's me all over. That's my whole DNA on that project.
Okay, let's show that, right? Let's just show that. Because here is an example of like Mia, who, you know, doing white hair. Look at that. I love this, by the way. The sectioning of the front in this, is so amazing.
I
I
can't
love
see
that
it.
I also love that she's kind of like trapped in the 80s a little bit. You know what I mean?
Let me see. I can't see it. What are we looking at?
Hold up. Hold on. There you go.
Oh, dude, listen, she was so lovely to work with. Okay.
Okay, this is Idina Menzel, Tony Award winner. Let it go. Idina Menzel, folks. All right, here's another. And these are all their
Julia.
natural hair, right, Mia? Like,
Hmm.
yeah,
That was a ponytail on it, Adina.
on Idina. I love the way her hair is sectioned here. It just shows so much
It's a
about
braid. Yeah, it has
you
like
know,
a little braid at the top going into a ponytail. Her character was like hilarious,
right
and like just really over the top, like her
over the
clothing, the
top.
jewelry. She was like,
And she
blinged
peaked
out.
like in the early 90s. You know what I mean? Like I know like where this girl went to high school, and who she was in
Exactly.
high school. You know what I mean? And then
Exactly.
here's some of the men work that Mia did. Now, is this a wig or is this his natural hair?
That's Adam's hair.
Ah,
And I
wonderful.
didn't do Adam. Anna, he has a personal that does his hair and makeup all the time.
Uh-huh.
Adam was really nice though. I just did another film with them in Philly that we're supposed to finish up this summer.
I love the range of your work, Mia. Can I just show a couple more photographs of your work? So, folks, this is before we get to that. Let me show what Mia's like Broadway work looks like. This is Shuffle Along. So hold on, I'm sharing it. Here you go. So this is Audra and Brander Victor Dixon. Now, this is what Mia's talking about, like, they 30 minutes to get them ready. So all of that hair that you see, folks, that needs to just get on in 30 minutes.
Wow, that show was so beautiful.
It's
I
so
can't get
gorgeous.
close.
I mean, look at Audra. How about
Right.
6 months pregnant here or something like that? You know,
Okay.
and huffing. Tap dancing, 6 months pregnant, or even like, I mean, like she took a leave because she had to give birth. Look at how beautiful that is. So for this particular show, Mia, I mean, the research must have been unbelievable.
Yeah, I think there's a photographer, James Vanderzee.
Yes, James
Yeah.
Vanderzee, famous African American photographer who photographed a lot of fancy Black folk.
Yes, Harlem
Yes.
Renaissance. Yeah, and I use a lot of his research. I mean, I love his 1920 stuff, especially because another like close up on the hair situation.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he has a lot of photos that are really clear and that really show the hair. Which the older the photos, sometimes they're so grainy or they don't really focus so much on the close-ups because they get the full body shots. But with his, you really get the shots of the hair. So I remember using a lot of his photos for my research on that one.
It is so beautiful. I want to just like show one last photo of well, you have so much work. I just like literally like, but let me show Mia's latest work, and let's just all marvel at the glory of Mia Neal. Um, okay, I'm gonna find a good close up of this. So this is Ma Rainey. And there's Chadwick. Is that his own hair, Mia?
That is. Chadwick had his own people. So for this wig, so Ma had two wigs, right? She had her like show wig, which was made of horsehair, because Anne Roth discovered that in her research that Ma Rainey wore horsehair wigs.
Like yak, basically, right? Like that, or like
Yeah,
horse.
so I ordered a horse mane. And when it showed up, of course, it was covered in manure and lice eggs. And but nothing like active. It was all dried and kicked, and you had to like peel it apart. And So the hairs were more like wires than hair, which I did not realize.
Right.
And but this particular wig that you're looking at right here, this one was made of European hair. And I
So
did
how
that.
do you make European hair look like black hair, Mia?
Well, this wig was supposed to look like a 1920s wig.
Like a
So it's
wig
a
wig.
coarse, exactly. So even though it's European hair, it is more of a coarse hair because the wigs were like, oh, they were like, whenever I see like photos of wig, they look really dense and kind of thick, almost like maybe they mixed the hair with something.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, and so I didn't want it to look like this silky, brand new 2021 wig,
Yes. Yeah.
So I wanted it to look old because everything on her, it still looks a little antiqued, but
Yes.
new for
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah. There's a
time, right?
patina to it. Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that was the purpose of that. And also she's always slapping her hat on it and taking it off and that sort of thing. And she really kind of plops this wig on like a hat. Was sort of
Yes.
my,
Yeah.
thought is
It's a
that
wig.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But particularly done in those waves and in that hair because this is a woman who, so Ma Rainey, so there's only 7 photographs that exist of Ma Rainey. So a lot of her storyline just had to be built up, like just, as we were talking about earlier, just making, filling in the blanks with the information
Creating
that you can
stories.
find about this
Yeah.
person exactly until you
Yeah.
come up with this complete story. And so, so for Ma Rainey, once Anne discovered the horsehair wig, we knew that her show wig needed to be built as a
Yeah.
horsehair wig. But her sort of self wig, because my guess is that she has her show costumes, everything goes into a box, and she has a separate look that she's kind of walks through the streets every day as, right? And
Yes.
right. And so that's the European wig because this is a woman who wears a fur in the summertime, wears a ton of jewelry, has gold teeth, who, and all of this sort of spans from she's first generation free in this country in her
Mhm.
family, right?
That means
And
the first Black person in her family to actually be
that
free.
wasn't born into slavery.
Yes.
And so, and she grew up in the rural South, in Georgia, and left there, changed her name to Ma Rainey. And so you have to look at the psychology behind a person who wears a fur in the summertime, right? Like she wears all her jewelry at once. She has, she's over the top and
Yeah.
she kind of defines everything, for herself. It's like she's married and she has a girlfriend,
Yeah.
she's a lesbian and a wife.
Yeah.
She is not playing by the rules, this woman,
Yeah. Yeah.
anything that she wants, she's going to get. This is the person who had been denied. And now that she has money and she has access to things, she wants it all. So,
Yeah.
and my guess is that when she looks at the magazines, because half of the things that she has on, that she has, she couldn't walk into the store and purchase these things as an African American woman. You know what I mean? They didn't service people of color. People of color couldn't go into these stores and shop. So where does she get these things from? She's probably has someone who purchases these things for her, right? And
Yes.
she sends them out. She points to things that I want to dress like this. I want hair like this. My guess is that her hair is very kinky underneath these wigs, and she
Yeah.
can't achieve those waves that she gets, right? But she
Yeah.
saw someone in a magazine and said, I want this. And
Yeah.
so this person went out and sourced this wig for her the
Yeah.
same way they sourced all these costumes and things for her
Yeah.
shows. And so that was the story behind the
I
European wig was she saw that all of the other girls, they have these waves. I want them. And she has the money to make that happen.
and this right here, what we're looking at, is this the horsehair wig?
This is the horsehair wig. So believe it or
Uh-huh.
not, this is all single strand because those hairs were so thick that I could not get more than one through the lace, through the holes in the lace.
My friends, I'm just
So
gonna close up on this. Horsehair is actually what we also, as costumers, what they used to make, like They used to make ribbons out of horsehair to put on hems, to put on hats, to put on everything. It's a very, very, it's almost like those nylon.
Yeah.
You know, it's very, very coarse. It's very coarse and it's very hard to work with. So kudos on that.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy too is that, so I had to boil it. I boiled it to try to clean it.
Yes,
Right.
get rid
But
of
when I
all that.
boiled it, I realized that it softened a little bit. Right. So I
Oh,
ended up using that same technique when I set the wig. So when I put it in the rollers, I submerged it in boiling water and then I baked it in the wig dryer. And what was crazy was that it had memory like a synthetic wig. So what was interesting was that I, for me, I realized why she would have worn a horsehair wig, because it maintained
right.
you know,
It
it
was her
kept that
version
curl.
of a synthetic wig.
It was their version of a
It
synthetic
was
wig.
basically their shake and go.
That was it. That
That's
was
it. Oh my God, Mia,
Yes.
you're a
Yes.
genius. That is
Listen,
literally their version, 1920s
yes,
version of a
of a
shake and
synthetic.
go
Yes.
wig.
My guess is wherever the wig is now, whatever box and storage that Netflix has it in, it still has the curls in it. It never had to be completely reset. It never lost the curl.
Mia, you are a genius. You are.
No, I'm not. That was all by like default. I was trying to get the lice, eggs, and the manure off of it because I couldn't put it on Viola Davis like that, right?
But that's what I mean. Like you
So the
discover these things
boiling.
because you're unafraid to experiment, you know, and you're going for it, you know. Again, like Ma Rainey breaking all the rules. Mia,
Right?
Mia, I just wanted to go back to my question, right? Because most of the hair that's being sourced right now, when you make
Mhm.
are European hair or Asian hair, right?
Right.
Those hairs are actually straight, right? Most of the
Right.
time they're straight. And so how do you get African American texture into a hair, you know, like when you do like for instance an afro, right? Like you did on your,
Yeah.
you know. So how do you do that?
Well, so I build the European hair because it's easier for me to build it when it's straight hair like that, right?
Yeah.
To keep the hairs together, to get because the kinky hairs, it knots up while you're working with it. So if you
Right.
build it from the kinky hair, you're gonna waste a lot of hair
A lot
because
of
a
hair.
lot of it's gonna knot up on itself, and
Yeah.
then you can't straighten it out anymore to get the, so I build it on European hair, and then I take, those little red stirring straws that you stir coffee.
Yes. Yes.
I take that and I roll little thin strips of hair on it,
So you make your
and
own
I
kinky
perm it.
hair
I perm it.
and you perm it. Wow. Folks, so basically what Mia is talking about is using as a sort of as a raw material is straight European hair or Asian hair, and then she literally creates the kink in it, the tiny
Yeah.
little curls that African American or African hair basically has, right? And she
Yeah.
replicates that and does a perm, which is
Right. And it
bonkers.
just turns right into an afro.
And can I just say the amount of like labor that goes into that? And
It's
producers, I
intense.
want you to listen to this because this is really what it takes, right? This is what it takes to do the job right. This is like, as you know, as you said, Scott Rudin said, get it right once, right? So this is what it takes. Like, so this is like, I think folks don't understand that wig making is not computerized. You know, wig
Right.
making
No.
is being done by hand, you know, and this is like an art form, you know. I don't want to use a craft because it really is like an art form that is still being done by hand. It cannot be replicated in any way that would
No.
look natural by a machine,
Right.
you know. We just have like a few, we've actually gone over time, but I want to just show me like one more album of Mia's amazing work because you know, Broadway's supposed to come back in March is what they're saying, but
I'm very excited for that too, I must say.
listen, we've all been missing it, right?
I mean, I knew I loved Broadway, but I mean, I miss it so much. I miss walking through that stage door. I miss tech and sitting out in the seats.
Yes.
Because,
Watch.
I love film and TV, but theater, it's something about that tech process where I just feel like families are made in there, where it's almost like joining a sorority or a fraternity or something. Like you really become this like kind of unit, and it's always that like, oh, the Color Purple family, the West Side Story family,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and you
yeah.
all
It's
have
literally
like
a family, a community,
totally,
Mia, the
totally.
amount of work on these fantastic actors, and just sort of the level of detail, even the sort of the shape ups with the braids and the way, these are so composed, just astounding work. Folks, for folks who are like, thinking, what is this like? Is that even like possible to have a career, or to have like, like a life that actually creates work like this and actually like make a living out of it? Mia is living proof, of just like,
You know what's so interesting when I look at the photos of the dancers, the actors in West Side Story, the I wish that I could show you the before and after, because all of them were like so suburban, like
yes,
very,
they're like,
like
yes.
out. Yes.
Like
And that was
vanilla.
like the thing, like especially the one you show with the braids and it has like the
Yeah.
fade on the side now. Like if you just see them before, and all of them have this like beautiful curly hair, and they're like, just like so sweet in the face and just like adorable, like all
Yeah.
of them, like absolutely adorable. And
But
nothing about them said like urban, nothing had like this,
dangerous,
No, these are like classically trained dancers
That's
who
right.
are,
They all, exactly. Thank you for saying
yeah,
that.
they really are. They're like classically trained dancers. They are, performers who
They
are,
have
she's a
master's
ballet
degrees in
dancer.
performer, like
Yeah, I mean, a
performance
lot of them are like in
methods.
ballet companies. They are, like, opera companies and was
Yeah,
part of their
yeah,
dance. Like amazing, amazing uh, kids. And they none of them had that look of danger
of
or
edge.
that sort of look of urban or
Yeah,
edgy
yeah,
or,
yeah, yeah.
and so I kept saying, I have got to make them look like if you were walking in the middle of the night, you might want to cross the street, when this person's coming. And like, how do you accomplish that with and it's funny, I had the conversation with Evil and Anne, the not Anne Roth, but I'm
Andy
blanking on
Hui.
Anne's list.
Yeah.
And so we were all talking about it, and we were like, it needs to happen. And one day the first kind of photo shoot that we did, you kind of tread lightly, so I didn't really go there. I didn't go there bringing in like a barber that was, I just said, okay, what, I'm going to do the cuts. I'll keep it really light and airy just in case. I don't want to go all the way there. And so after that first like camera test, we went and met with Scott. Scott had everyone come to the office, and he was like, this is not it. Like we've got to really. And I said, okay, not a problem. I went to Brooklyn. I have a friend that owns a barbershop there. Her name is Kane. I said, Kane, I need you and some barbers to come and do this show. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you're about to make your Broadway debut because you've got to come and do this show for me. And so they came, and I went through and pulled all of these different photos. I was like, I'm shaving this person's head. I'm doing this over here. Let's put these lines over here. Let's do this. And I remember Evo coming in when we were doing, he was like, you are very brave to cut everyone's. I said, this is the only way to do it. This is it.
And you know what I love about these photographs? And, it's just, first of all, I love that you're talking about this in great detail, because it just takes as much labor to do these kind of shows as with a period show. And I think folks
Totally.
understand that this is, when you look at these photographs, as Mia said, you're looking at characters, and you're looking at a history. Like, as Mia said, you want to maybe cross the street, if
Right.
you encounter these folks. But these are characters. The actors did not come that way.
Not at all.
And so there's a lot of work that's being
Yeah. Like,
placed on character and storytelling. Like, I love these folks, because like you're looking at them and you're like, yes, I can imagine what their life is. I can imagine what,
Right.
what these, young men are going through, I love these photographs.
Yeah, because they look so natural as this, right? But
Yes,
if you really see the before and after, it was drastically different.
I believe, because I know some of these boys.
Yeah, drastically different. And
Yeah.
so yeah.
Mia, thank you. This is such I love celebrating you. I love celebrating your work. You are such a light to our industry, and
Oh, thanks, Clint. I
you're
feel the
just
same
like,
about you. I feel the same way about you.
and I love talking to you because I feel like I just, I can go on talking and talking about like your love for what you do and for the theater and for film is really evident. And, we just can't wait to see what's next. What is next?
What is next? Well, let's see. I have
I know you can't talk
Amroth.
about the films.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, there are some Broadway things that have been, kind of, we're just waiting,
That's right.
things to
That's
get
right.
back up and going. So
That's right.
there's some Broadway stuff and there's some film stuff going on that should be really interesting, really, really interesting. And yeah. But you know
Yeah,
what I
I
would like to
know.
say one thing too, because I
Yes.
think in the midst of everything that's going on around diversity and
Yeah.
inclusiveness and uh one of the most and it's interesting because when you said you keep saying all this different work and you were doing this and doing that, and I've had that opportunity to kind of hop around and sometimes I'm working on a show where I literally am the only Black person
Yeah.
at the table, like
Yeah.
um and it really is because of Ann Roth.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
so I always have to make it a point to say that
Yeah.
it really was her sort of seeing me as an individual,
Thank you. Yeah.
and giving me and really being able to say, okay, I like the way that she does hair. Like, I like how she does hair. Like,
Yeah.
I like how she designs things.
Yeah.
I like how and so not saying, oh, I'm doing a Black show. Let me call Mia,
Yeah.
right? I'm doing a show and I want Mia on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I brought that up to her recently because I was saying, Ann, God, what a different world we would live in if it was just full of Ann Roths,
Yes.
where
Yeah.
people were able to just really showcase who they are and be able to, have those opportunities based off of what they can do,
Thank you for
right?
doing that. And
Uh,
for having like allies and gatekeepers who literally see beyond,
yeah,
who
yeah.
imagine more things for us, right?
Is really how her brain works.
Yeah.
And I realized that when we went to sorry to make this so big, but I have to mention it because I feel like I can't
No.
mention my career or accomplishments without really highlighting the fact that, Anne has given me so many opportunities to shine in areas that I probably would not have been thought of, to be a part of. And I'm not labeling that racism or anything like that, right? Because I know that when we were children, all of us growing up in this country, we were taught and drilled into us, you have the fireman, you have the police officer, and you have the bear. Who doesn't fit into this category, right? Now, they could very easily have said, what similarities do all of these things have? They're living things. They all have a right to be here. There is space in the world for all of these things, but they don't do that, right? We're taught who doesn't fit. And and they do it and they drill us to do roles and roles and roles of that until we do it subconsciously, right? And so we operate in the conscious and in the subconscious. And so subconsciously, we are always categorizing things and putting things in their place because that's what we've been taught to do. Right. And so I think that we do things subconsciously without realizing it, and then we're programmed to do it. And so I think that it's not unusual that if someone's working on a Black show, that they would think of Mia, right? Let me call Mia. It's a Black show. We're doing this. And I appreciate those phone calls And I don't think that that person is also making a conscious decision to not call me when they're working on something else. I think when they work on that, their brain goes to the person that fits the description of who should be doing that.
Mhm.
Well, somehow Ann doesn't have that. Somehow her conscious and subconscious just goes straight to, I like this person's work. I like how this person operates. This person is a good fit for my projects,
Mm.
no matter what that project is.
Right.
And so I've been really blessed, and I appreciate her on another level, because by her doing it, other people have now expanded their boxes with me. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And
Yes.
now
Yes.
they have seen me in these different lights, and they hire me for projects that I don't feel I would have normally, And so my career has been able to go places, and I've been able to have opportunities. And it all directly goes back to Anne.
Yes.
And I see how she moves through the world the same way. It's like I figured, I kept thinking, how does she do these? I mean, her costumes are amazing. And we were at a hotel while we were shooting Ma Rainey. We stayed at the same hotel in Pittsburgh. And whenever people would find out that I was working on the film, they would say, do you know Ann? There's Ann, this thing. And I would say, yes, I know Ann. I'm here because of Ann. And so they all had a story, right? We talk about anyone at the hotel. I'm talking about they could be, the janitor, the front desk person, the whoever, the manager. They all had an Ann story that they would share with me.
Yeah.
And Ann knew everything about them. I had breakfast with her one morning. She said, oh, this is a woman here. So she has a daughter that goes so-and-so. And when she's at work, then this person watches her daughter. And I was like, wow. And it's her sort of interest in people, right? Everyone, that's like so organic that is like, and I thought, well, this is why she's so good at costume design, because she knows everyone's story.
Yeah.
Everybody, right?
Observe.
And and even when she was dressing the background people, she would put them in the wardrobe, and then she would make them walk. And there were 600, 700, 800 background people for this, okay? And she made them all walk in front of her.
Yeah.
And when they would walk, she would say, well, those can't possibly be her shoes, because she can't walk in them. Give her some more shoes. Or she'll say, I think this person's going to the grocery store, or she just left the dentist, so she's going here. Yeah. And so she would have just thrown this on, and she needs a hat and this. And so anyway, all that to say that, really seeing people as individuals, right? Because I don't want to be the diversity hire ever. I don't think anyone with real talent or skill.
Yes, absolutely. And so I think I love what you said about if the world was just filled of Ann Roths, then it would
exactly. When you just really just see people as individuals, like I really think that's the place we should be starting from. Not just let's go out and let's start filling all the empty spaces with people of color, because we don't have. Let's take a breath. Let's everybody breathe, and let's instead really start examining our conscious and our subconscious thoughts, right? And how we place things. And then let's re-examine it and say, okay, you know what? I want the cream of the crop, because everybody has it, and let's start hiring people because of their abilities, not just for diversity purposes,
I love that, because I think that also goes to what I always say is like, if you want the cream of the crop, then you need to train more people.
Totally. Listen, opportunities need to be there. I'm not in any way washing that away. Yeah. I just don't want it to be a let's rush and do this, because then if you're just doing that and that person can't actually do the job, that's not going to be a good look, right? And then
it's actually more damaging, right? Like
that's exactly my point.
Movement, because all of a sudden it's like, oh, see what happened?
We tried.
Exactly. And so
exactly.
So it's really, I think what you're saying is like, thank goodness for folks like Ann who are like, totally. Who like give it opportunities, but also nurture the artist. Like, it's just not enough to hire one person for one job. It's like, let's like keep on like, because it is
build a relationship. Yeah. Build a relationship and really get to know the person, so you can see them as an individual, know what their talents are, and give them those opportunities.
And that's the real inclusion, to be honest.
Exactly.
It is, it's not just about getting the bodies inside the door.
No, it's
It's like,
not.
then what are you going to do to set them up for success?
Yeah, no, that's not the move.
It's not the move. It's not the move.
That's not the move.
And Mia, I just wanted to also just say, thank you for all of what you do, for actually breaking the barriers and the bounds of what, what people can do. And clearly you can do everything, so
Oh, thanks, Clint.
I had a great time talking to you, and I wish we could chat forever. And I guess we'll talk soon.
Yes, thank you. I
Bye,
appreciate it.
love. I appreciate you.
All right.
Soon.
Take
Bye.
care, Clint.